Hi, all. Welcome to another episode of Saturday Architecture. Since we are going back to hybrid, which is the combination of working online and offline, as architects, right, and governing architecture, I was curious to know each role has something different to do, and each of their deliverable has something different to do. So I was curious in this hybrid environment, which is going to be there for years to come. So I was curious to know things around this.
Is it was not new for me. The If I can say something new, which was new, was the more increased use of video, right? Which wasn't the case earlier. So for me, the only major change which has happened for um, what we may classify as hybrid is the increased use of video. But from the concept of working in person or working remotely, partly in person, and so that has existed for me for a very, very long time, right? Ever since maybe 1997, right? And I have been used to working from home, working from customers' locations, right? Doing conference calls, right? So what I believe is, if any sense of uh, a different sense of understanding how it works in person, how it works in online video chat, and how it works in a conference call, right? So I know there are such subtle things which you can never make out unless you are in physical presence. But over a period of time, you tend to develop this sense of listening carefully or watching the video carefully, right? Where those missing signals now have to be compensated for, right? So it's like when they say, if one of your senses goes is diminished, some other senses become more important, right? So when you are, especially if you are in a conference call situation, right, where you cannot see the people, right, you're just listening, you tend to listen much more carefully than if you are in person, right? And you want to pick up things which you would not otherwise if you are in person, because you're depending on all the other cues which would exist in a conference room, right? So those things, it's difficult, but it has increased where the
So
where
that's a good point.
where yeah,
Let me just
yeah.
uh, add, or rather, a question on that. Right? Like, let's say you have a team members. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Previously, you call for a team meeting. It becomes a little easier. Now it becomes a little more. How would you encourage your team to listen more? Right? As an architect, I need to build that culture. Right? If, like, in a real world, if my team, it could be developers, testers, other stakeholders, if they were listening at a 30% efficiency, now they
Mm-hmm.
have to listen at a 50 or a 60% efficiencies, right? As an architect, how do I, what can I do such that that happens?
So I think this is again from the perspective of getting used to that, right? The more you do it, and the last 2 years have proven that you can, the more you do it, the better it becomes. Because when people know there is no other option, I believe if you have had more of these sessions with your teams, they would have gotten used to this concept of working remotely and say, because we cannot really meet in person, we have to do it this way, right? If if we put that as a condition that we have to do it this way, right, because there is no option, because there, and that thing existed for at least 2 years, literally 2 years, that you could not meet in person, it was not safe to do so, right? And people develop those things, right? And you can still continue with that, where you can say you can develop certain I would say modes of communication, where you say, this is how we give respect in a online scenario, right? When you see, in a physical situation where you can raise a hand, or there are now in conference systems like Zoom and all, where you can raise your hand, right? And those things, those mechanisms, if they are well developed, right, the etiquette, so to say, right, the etiquette of participating in such a situation is well developed, things become easier, right? That is what is the enabling factor for those things, right? So this is because of the situation you develop those skills, right, which you would not have otherwise if that situation did not exist, right? So that's my point, that you can compensate for it. It is not 100%, but it still works. It has worked
So
for me
as
for
an
last 20
architect,
years.
I don't have to do anything. The
No, you have
environment
to
will
do
take
it
care.
as an architect. You have to build that etiquette within the team,
Uh,
right? You
those
have to build that etiquette, that when we work in a conference call, this is how this is how we speak. Don't speak over each other if you want important point. And we do means
uh,
all regular etiquettes, which says if you're in a room full of 5 to 10 people, you give everybody a
we
chance
got
to
okay.
say
So
something, right?
whatever etiquettes we expect in a real world has to be kind of followed more religiously in a
Yes,
remote kind of
yes,
thing. Okay, super.
yeah.
How has it been for you?
Sorry, like, are you asking me?
Yeah, you like what has been your experience? Do you think did you had to do something differently within your team such that you work better, easier? Which actually leads to the question that you need that obviously leads to a better architecture, better decision, better solutions.
Okay, so if you ask us if we have started in that our whole architecture is already designed for remote working environment. So we have like all necessary tools in the like cloud already, and we already started before the COVID, I mean to say. So that means like the COVID, it didn't affect our the business as usual, and it was continued, and there is no and I would say, and see, because it is a new normal, and that some of the like as an architect we need to take care of, we need to give this we need to make everyone to feel their responsibility and what needs to be done and how to utilize this one, like because like what I mean to say is some of the some of the like employees, since they are like they are feeling that okay, since they are from home, like they have a full freedom of whether like need to concentrate on that particular task, because there are a um, uh, lot of like noises, I would say, and which would distract them to so it again leads to us to a micromanagement, which we don't want to do it in the basic. Uh, and I would say that okay, as Deepak said, we need to educate with the responsibility what can be done and how should be. And if you say the overall performance, how we have achieved is that I still feel that it is not as how we are coming to office and doing the work. It is uh, that that work is not yet been no can what I mean to say is like I would say like we could achieve only the 50-60% of work when they are working from the remote. Then what they are how we are coming to office and able to do it.
Yeah. So do you have any plans on how to increase it? What is the approach to that?
Okay, so as of now, since we have already we already call them office, and right now in 100% we are working from office.
Oh, you don't have a remote thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
we don't have a remote as of, but but we are planning to build this capability internally. So
How?
we have,
You have any plans on how you plan to
yeah,
do
so
that?
at least no, we can voluntarily give like a couple of employees like they can work from home for 1 or 2 weeks in a month.
That is, but okay. So the question is not how to implement hybrid. The question is how do you increase that efficiency when they are working like that? You said it is only at 60%, right? So
Yeah.
it's not just enough to say, okay, you guys work remote for 2 weeks. We also have to say how, because you don't want that efficiency to drop, right? You also need to have a thinking in parallel that when I'm going to give remote, I have to do something else. Have you given some thought to that? What are you going to do when you ask them to work remote, such that the efficiency doesn't drop so badly?
That we are still thinking actually.
Okay.
Okay, so we haven't planned it actually. So we are. I have a plan. Okay, how we can build this capability? We are still planning it. It is not started implemented. So as
Understood. Okay.
Well, I think what you asked is a very important question, right? How do you build this capability, right? One, I think, is being conscious that it requires effort,
Uh,
right? It will not happen automatically. It will not just because you say you work remotely, it will automatically sort of fall into place, right? So you have to consciously build that capability that people actually understand that this is different, right? One is that you see people like me who have always done that thing, we sort of think that everybody knows how to do this, right? And which is not true, right? Which is and I know specifically of people who say I cannot work from home, right? And say I need to come to office for me to be efficient, right? And you need to respect that also, right? Because these people, whatever maybe the situation at home, they do not have a separate room, it may be so many other factors which are influencing why they have to come home, and maybe simply this is a culture which is ingrained to them, right? That they need to come to office. And there'll be some people like me who never need to come to office. I am okay wherever I am. If you really want to meet me, then I will come, right? So there is all kinds of extreme examples of people wanting to work the way they want to work, right? So now the job of the architect is to figure out, in spite of having all these extreme differences, earlier you could force them to come to office, right? Now you cannot force them to come to office. Now what do you do to make sure that we have these all kinds of people who are partly remote, who will be people who are in the middle and say, okay, I'm okay to come to office if then also and so. So you have to work out that whole mechanism. The other important thing is working out the technology. Technology is an important.
How do you use?
Yeah.
Okay. As an enabler for
Yes,
these things,
technology is a very important part of it. How you use the technology, how you make sure that people understand how to use the technology, right? So there are simple things like how do you work on a document together, right? How do you work on a document together, right? These capabilities have existed in Office 365, Google Docs, all these things for long, right?
Correct.
But now you can really use it, right? Now you can really use it and say, okay, so even though we are working remotely, I'm not looking over your shoulder, but you can still share your screen, or I can work simultaneously, edit the document with you, right? So those are the things which are enablers, which need to be thought about and consciously thought about. And because they will keep on changing, and whether metaverse becomes a reality or not, we really don't know. But at least the existing technologies, they should be really leveraged.
Okay, sure. I think that makes sense. I think the only thing, in addition to whatever you talked about, right? I kind of realized that the real challenge is when we want to have a conflict situation, or when I want to put some other stakeholder in trouble, right? As an architect, it is imperative that I do that. I bring those conflicts to the surface. I challenge people, challenge beliefs. And that is a core part of an architect's job. And it was always very hard to do it remotely. In person, those days, right? Like whenever, like 1 or 2 days when people appear in person, I kind of allocate my work or the planning such that, let's call it like in person means conflict kind of a thing. It's a better place to handle conflicts and challenging discussions over there. So that
I agree. And you could reserve your in-person meeting exactly for that, right? Something which you cannot achieve remotely, and you are constrained. That is exactly where the hybrid comes in. It says, okay, for one day, everybody comes in and we have a fight, and then we
Yeah,
resolve
then
everything. And that is the purpose of that meeting.
yeah,
Yeah, as you said, like whether that everything can be done in the remotely, yes, it can be done. And only thing is, as Kumaran said, we need to find out how we can improve the efficiency of the work what we are doing right now. So that conflicts anyway, like that needs to be thought of and resolved.
But I think
Oh,
important piece is to also understand the individual constraints,
conferences.
right? The individual constraints, right? That is the value you can give to your employees as a return. That we understand your constraint, you are unable to work remotely, so we are okay if you work in the office. Right? It's
That
not that everybody is forced to work remote.
it it's supposed to be optional. It's not
Yes.
supposed whether come to office or remote.
Yes.
Both should not be compulsory. It should be optional.
Yeah. So in that way, this is an incentive. The hybrid is an added incentive. This should not be used as a tool to sort of uh, force behavior. Right? It's a incentive. If you are able to provide that incentive to your employees, you can do that. But if you are unable to provide it, then obviously you have to bring everybody to the same place of work, right? And there are not all jobs can actually work remotely. In our business, yes, but in some businesses there is means if you have to have production floor monitoring all those things, you have to be on the in the manufacturing area. There are things you can do remotely, but there are things you cannot do remotely. So
right.
that's
Super.
Yeah.
Thanks, Deepak. Thanks, Venkat, for sharing your views. We would connect back in the next episode.